Can you believe it? Wellness Rebranded is turning 3. We're throwing a party.
And it's not just any party. We'll have a live recording of the podcast happening right there. So bring your questions, your stories, and maybe even your sass because you just might end up on the show.
It's going to be a night of community connection and a whole lot of fun. So mark your calendar for October 23rd. Grab your friends and come celebrate 3 years of rebranding wellness with us. We cannot wait to see you there.
Check out the link below for all the details.
Welcome to Wellness Rebranded, the podcast for women ready to redesign their relationship with food, fitness, and feelings.
We are a registered dietitian, a personal trainer, and a mental health therapist. 3 experts, 1 mission.
To help you break free from diet culture, hustle culture, and emotional burnout, let's redefine what wellness really means on your terms.
We've got a great conversation for you today, especially for all the moms out there. So often, ladies, we focus on our own wellness, right? And that's super important. But motherhood also brings the added layer of caring for our kids' well-being. Today, we're sitting down with a child psychiatrist to talk about how we can guide our kids through their own mental health journey, but also how to know when they need that extra support, when to seek professional help, and how we as moms can take care of ourselves in the process. We have Dr. Melissa Wellner with us. She's a double board certified adult, child, and adolescent psychiatrist and the founder of Annapolis Psychiatry. She has over a decade of experience providing psychiatric care for children, adolescents, and adults. I didn't know it was also adults. I'm learning that. Okay. Dr. Wellner received her medical degree from Jefferson Medical College and completing her residency and fellowship trainings at the University of Maryland and Johns Hopkins hospitals. Dr. Wellner, thank you. Welcome. Thank you.
So much for having me.
We love having you. I don't think
Yeah.
we've had a psychiatrist before, ladies, have we? I don't think so.
We're unfortunately few and far between, unfortunately. So there's not that many of us out there.
Right?
Unfortunately, the country as a whole is in need of more child psychiatrists, particularly.
Yes.
I did not know that.
Yeah, I did know that actually. But okay. So we're happy you're here. We feel honored of having one of the very few.
I'm the very best.
So, Dr. Wellner, let's jump right in. If there are mothers out there that are wondering, do I need, like, I was reading statistics that sometimes it can take about 10 years from the moment a person sees symptoms showing up and the moment they look for professional help because you maybe minimize what's happening or think it's going to just disappear on its own, or maybe you just don't know what to look for before you get that professional help. If there's any moms out there wondering, I wonder if this thing that is happening with my kid is worth taking a deeper look, where do we start?
So always trust your gut. Like, as a parent, you know your kid the best. If something feels off and you're not sure, it's always better just to reach out and ask. And you can just start with your pediatrician, start with your kid's primary care doctor. They have training to kind of screen and start addressing these issues and can really help you determine, like, this is normal, it's not normal. And because every kid has bad days, like, every kid's going to throw a tantrum. They're all going to be moody teenagers at some point, but there's a fine line in there. And sometimes it's really hard. Like, is my teen just being moody, or are they really just really irritable, which is a sign of adolescent depression? And it's hard to know. And when you're super close to the situation, it's even harder to know.
Yeah. Yeah. And I always say that also, how much what they're seeing in your kids, what we're seeing in our kids is affecting their functioning, right?
Yeah.
It's affecting their day to day. Even if nobody else is noticing, is how, if you've seen any changes, like you said,
Yeah.
we know our kids, and then all of a sudden we start noticing these changes that catch our attention, are good to look
Yes. So big changes in mood or behaviors that are out of the norm for your kid that persist. So like the one off day is the one off day. But when you start seeing a pattern developing, that should start giving you some warning signs that like something seems off. And it may be that you reach out to your kid's school and they're like, we haven't seen anything. Don't take that as like, oh, okay, everything's actually fine. I've seen plenty of kids in my years in practice that are straight A students, but are really struggling internally, and they mask really well. Kids mask better than adults do, I feel like they can hold it together for the school day. Like, yeah, they're bright kids and they are getting good grades and they perform on the sports field, but what's going on internally is something totally different. So definitely like big changes in mood or behavior that persist. If they withdraw from things, they don't seem interested in hanging with their friends anymore. This is a kid who has participated in dance their whole life and suddenly doesn't want to go to dance class.
Right.
Like, that can be normal, but it could also be a warning sign. If they don't want to engage with family anymore, like they're constantly just held up in their room, doors shut, and just not participating anymore. Like, if there is a change in grades at school, or school does start noticing changes, that is a warning sign. Like, sleep and appetite changes are other things to be on the lookout for. There's normal developmental changes that happen throughout the lifespan with sleep and appetite. But if all of a sudden, like, they're sleeping all the time or they're constantly taking naps and it seems a little off to you, a lot of times people will be like, oh, maybe they're in a growth spurt, but are they really? And that's when go and ask the pediatrician, because they have their growth data. They could tell you where they're at, if they're in a growth spurt or not, or they're starting puberty or not. And then any risk-taking behavior that involves any talk of self-harm, suicidality, or risk-taking behavior that they're experimenting with things that just seem out of the norm, like, that's a warning sign. And you don't want to ignore any of that.
A good thing something that I've heard from parents before is that many times, well, one thing is, even if we notice changes, not necessarily means your kid is going to be diagnosed with something. It could be just a change of something, surfacing that we want to take care of. Because the one thing that I've commonly heard from parents is sometimes the fear of not wanting your kid to get a diagnosis. Therefore, I don't look further, because sometimes, things that are hiding.
Still some stigma. Sometimes.
Yeah, and it hurt less when you don't know, right? So sometimes it's so hard that you see something and you're worried, but you don't want to look further, because what if my kid gets diagnosed with depression or OCD or...
That kind of goes along exactly with what I was going to ask Maria, which is 10 years is a really long time from like kind of noticing to getting into see someone. And so what do you see, Dr. Wellner, as like the obstacles and fears? Certainly one of them.
There's definitely sometimes fear of this being something more, that they are going to get a diagnosis. Sometimes there's just a lack of knowledge. Older generations did not speak as openly about mental health. There was a lot less resources and even access to care. To care is also still a major barrier in the mental health world. Unfortunately, this is an older statistic, so I haven't looked it up recently, but there are not enough child psychiatrists to the need in any state in the United States. The only area that has the appropriate ratio is Washington, D.C., which is really teeny tiny, and you have a lot of major academic institutions in D.C. So access to care is a huge problem. Telehealth has helped some of that access, especially for people that live in more rural areas. You're not going to find someone. So I think there's still some stigma about accessing it, or fear of, what is going on with my kid. Sometimes people just want to brush it off as this is normal, this is just a stage, and try to brush it under the rug. And sometimes people are trying to get help and just can't find it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's definitely scary. I did not realize, Maria, that the statistic was actually that long. That's a very scary
And
statistic.
that's an old statistic too. I'll have to look further, but those are the reasons that I read. It's like people are either minimizing what they see, or accessing care is difficult, or yeah, you're brushing it off, or sometimes since the symptoms come and go when they're not present, you're like, oh, we're good, and then they come back, let's say for depression, and then that wave passes. So you can be that, and it's the average. It doesn't mean that every person takes 10 years, but it's hard to make that decision sometimes of, what, I'm noticing this, I'm gonna ask a professional. I get it. I get it.
And I think too, it depends on really getting some information from who else is involved with your kid's life. Like, speak to the teachers, speak to the kid's pediatrician, ask other mom friends, like, hey, have you been through this before? Like, if they have kids of similar ages, sometimes there's a lot of support. And sometimes when you start that conversation, I think a lot of people quickly realize that a lot of people have been in the same boat.
Mm-hmm. Or the opposite, Dr. Wellner. What about the times when you as a mom notices things, but nobody else does? The teacher says things are fine in school, or your spouse is one of those that don't believe that, not my kid kind
Yeah.
of reaction, right? And then you notice something, as a mom, like you're saying, your gut is telling you something, but that the people around you are not supporting your decision to go find that help. That's another one.
And in those scenarios, trust your gut. I would rather someone overdo it and get told
Right.
by their pediatrician, the school counselor, like, hey, we met with your child, we hear your concerns, like, we'll keep an eye on things, but somebody else gets involved, because otherwise it's also going to drive you crazy as the parent, because you're going to be sitting there ruminating, second guessing, like, well, am I right? Am I wrong? And you need that third party view to really kind of provide that reassurance.
Yeah.
Conversations are so important to have, just for like that validation of, that you're paying attention, you're doing the right things, you're taking the steps.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like having those conversations about mental health with your kids can be really challenging. Do you have any tips about how to approach that without it being scary or stigmatizing?
So a lot of times, because even when people are stepping foot in my office, sometimes they're still walking in with a stigma even after they're seeing me. And a lot of times I'll compare it to, like, hey, do you have a friend? Do you know somebody that has asthma? And compare it to a physical issue, because a lot of the stigma kind of comes from, like, it's like hidden. And it's like, well, if you know a friend that has asthma, like, they need to treat that. Like, if you're feeling sad or worried, it's the same thing treating that as it would be for your friend getting an inhaler. The treatment might look different, but we still need to address the whole person. And that includes your emotions as well as your physical health.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I've noticed also as kids get older, like it's when kids are small, right? Babies, toddlers, even elementary school, parents are really good at sort of talking about, oh, my kid's not sleeping, or Johnny's hitting so and so on the playground, or this is happening, right? And getting that kind of hive mind and different feedback. But as kids get older and into teenage years, I feel like a lot of those more meaningful conversations tend to decrease a lot. And it's often because there is either stigma or shame involved, but also you are trying to respect your child's privacy, and it's hard to navigate that line as a parent, I think.
And I think those points are so important to still be talking to your kids about, because your teenagers are talking to one another about these things. Today's kids talk more about mental health than older generations did. They're actually a lot more open about talking about it. Not everyone. I mean, this isn't like a blanket thing, but they are talking, and they're also getting a lot of information from other sources. And you want to know what they're seeing online, what they're seeing on social media. So it's creating that space when they're young, continuing it is easier if you've created it when they're young and they're having those conversations. And it can be as simple as a few minutes of private time. And this is not the thing to do, when your kid is basically around their friends. These are private conversations to have with your teen. Please don't try to address it when their friends are around.
But even for those who are listening that maybe their kids are not in elementary school anymore, they're high school or college, I always think there's an opportunity to start those conversations, even if if we didn't do them before, is maybe even coming just like that. You know what? I've realized that I haven't had these conversations with you, and all you is important to me, your physical health and your emotional health, and I've noticed this and that, and I'm concerned about you. And as your mom, since I'll always be your mom until the day I die, I want to make sure that you're okay. And one way is for me to notice these things and help you find people that can help us, because sometimes I hear a lot of moms like, oh, Maria, now my kids are in college, or this mom, I'm thinking the kids are even out of college, and she regrets not having these conversations then. And I say, you can still have them now. Like you're not stop being a mom, and that's part of being a mom now, because we also learn new things. What do we know in this motherhood journey? We learn every day. And
there's no rule book and guidebook that comes with having kids, unfortunately. And there's no one right way to go about it.
Yeah.
Turns out they also left a lot out of that what to expect book.
Yeah.
I think sometimes some people that read those books end up more anxious than those that don't.
I can see that. I was probably one of those.
Jukester. Fun, fast, fitness. Jukester's unpredictable motion trains you to see, think, and react faster than your competition. Jukester is a powerful coordination tool. It can be added to any exercise. Its patented movement strengthens the link between your body and brain. Jukester by Health and Fitness Technologies. Jukester. It's about to get real. Buy yours at jukester.com.
So we've covered maybe when to look for help, maybe how to have these conversations, like how to approach these conversations about mental health with teens or even older or younger. I always say that it's good to even bring them up, not only when we notice things that are concerning, but just in general, how it's part of their overall health. I always thought, I know I'm a therapist, but I always thought that I wanted to have a therapist there for my kids and as an extra team member, because I knew I didn't have to do it all. Motherhood is hard as it is. And I thought I need more support, because also I'm not in the best state emotionally to listen to my kids' problems. There are times that they come to me and I'm like, oh God, not again, not right now. I'm a human too. So I felt that I needed, and thankfully I found a therapist that she's like, yeah, we can do it whenever they need. And it's like, like every 2 months check-in kind of thing. And it worked.
Yeah.
And they learned that is one more resource to have, that it can come handy when you really, really need it. So that's another idea. But the next point I wanted to talk, now that I know that you're an adult psychiatrist too, that I didn't know, I'm going to take advantage of this information. I'll start with in my case, for example, I didn't realize how much personal work I needed to do, Dr. Wellner, until I became a mother. Like, I went to therapy before becoming a mother, but once I became a mother, all the triggers that I realized I had that I didn't know, with this new thing of taking care of another human being in all the aspects of that is physically, emotionally, they need to eat, they need clothing, they need, they need a lot of stuff. They need a lot.
They need a lot.
They need a lot.
No wonder we're all exhausted.
It's not the physical that is a lot. It's the emotional that's.
Thank you.
It's a huge emotional burden becoming a parent. And it's actually, the physical stuff is easier to provide.
Yeah. Where's the book? Why there wasn't a book that told me about this? Why did I have to find out right when, like hard in my face that it was going to take so much out of me? So all this to ask, how as mothers can we navigate this beautiful journey of motherhood with all the stuff that comes to us as women in our own mental health? Like, I feel that, I mean, I love my kids and it's been a great addition to my mental health, but at other times it's extra layers that impact my own mental health.
But I
Yeah,
think
that whole "you're only as happy as your unhappiest child" is very, very true.
oh yeah. Oh yeah. I think it's super important that whether or not your kids are struggling, like if you need support of your own, like you should totally seek out support of your own. And self-care is super, super important. Like you need to carve out those, even if it's only a few moments that you have to yourself, because depending on your family dynamics, that may be all that you get, that it's okay. But I also think it's really okay as a parent to say to your kids, like, I need a break. I need a few minutes. Like, I will get back to you. But it's okay. It's also okay to show them that you're having your own emotions. I think it creates a space then where they're comfortable showing their emotions. Like, and explaining, like, I'm really stressed out because of whatever's going on. But I encourage all the time for if your kid is struggling with their mental health, that parent, I immediately often recommend therapy or parent coaching to help assist those families, because it's another added layer on top of all the things that naturally come with just being a parent, because it's hard. It's very hard. And you may not see eye to eye with your partner on everything that's going on with a child. Like that makes it extra difficult too. And more often than not, where I have found things to be really helpful is like recommending family therapy to folks, because family therapy is about communicating better. You know, the main stressors come from sometimes simple word choice can make a massive difference. The words, how you're stringing words together, the tone that you're using, those things make a huge, huge difference. But I also think as a mom, it is really okay to say, I need some space right now. I need to take 5 minutes.
My 5-year-old the other day told me, he was like, Mom, I can tell that you're really frustrated right now. You should take a breath. And I was like, are you parenting me? Get out of here with that.
That's awesome.
But I was like, yeah, good idea. I need some space.
Yeah. I mean, I noticed for myself, like, especially with like certain, like the annoying, like kitty toys and stuff. It was like, oh, goodness gracious. Like, I can't hear that noise or that song again. Like, and I'll never forget, like, our pediatrician said, he was like, one of my proudest parenting moments was that, like, my kid's favorite band growing up was, like, Green Day. And he told me this when my oldest was, like, a newborn. I'm like, I am not going to play annoying kid music in the car because it's going to drive me up a wall. I'm going to listen to stuff that's appropriate, but what I want to listen to. And little things like that can make a big difference, because, like, I don't want to listen to these kitty songs, for a half-hour car ride.
Yeah. I will say we have done that too, and my son has excellent taste in music.
Yeah, right? Like a great thing. And then it's
he
like
also uses a lot of very questionable lyrics at inappropriate places, because I'm a little bit more lenient with what's appropriate and what's not. But I have to say, we jam together in the car.
But then you can bond with your kid over something mutual rather than driving your own self insane listening to some kid song over and over again.
Totally.
I wish I would have known you when my first daughter was born, because we definitely had to listen to kid music everywhere we went. We had to take the CD. I'm dating myself, but when we traveled, we one time left it in a rental car, and we were like, oh no, how are we going to get home?
I'm
She'll
sorry,
cry the whole time.
Elizabeth, what are CDs? I have no idea.
Very
Too
funny.
young for
We
it.
did have a hard year of Baby Shark, and that was
Oh,
that was
Oh.
the straw that broke the camel's back, where I was like, I'm done. We're listening to Tupac and Nelly and Pink, and I don't care. It won't be Baby Shark.
yeah. My Spotify playlist in the car right now is called the post grunge mix. So I just have to be careful because some of the lyrics have inappropriate language in them, since my youngest is only 5. But I'm like, if it happens, I'm like, we don't say that word.
Yes.
But like, we can, at least on the car ride to school, I'm not like, oh my God, I'm listening to Baby Shark for the millionth time.
Mm-hmm.
Totally.
Well, and this is a good point because I mean, with the women that I've worked with, guilt is a common emotion. There's so much pressure to do it a certain way or be that mom that is sitting on the floor playing with toys with your kids all the time, and that is it's exhausting. And even talking about guilt, the guilt that sometimes come, or the thought that if your kid is actually diagnosed with something or going through a struggle with their mental health, then it's her fault as mom. We did something wrong. We failed somewhere, and that is not true. And I think
So
that's
not true.
important, right? It's important to talk about it because sometimes that is the obstacle of us, finding that help, because then it comes paired with that guilt.
And that's like the same reframing as if your kid has a physical diagnosis. Like, you didn't
Mm-hmm.
cause that. Like, if your kid has something, they have something, it is not your fault.
Mm-hmm.
And you're doing the right things if you're seeking help for whatever it is that they have.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
it's totally not like a parent's fault, but yes, the parental guilt is huge, but that's also a reason to seek out your own therapy treatment so you can work through those feelings and emotions with a professional for yourself and get support for yourself. Parenting is the hardest job in the world. I say all the time, like, I mean, I work in the mental health field, obviously. It is easier to go to work than to be a mom of 3 kids.
Mm-hmm.
That it's really hard.
It's
I
a
think it's
care. It's
easier
a
to go to work than
caregiving.
be a mom of 1 kid.
Yeah.
At least at my job. I
It
can't
doesn't matter
speak
how
for
many
you.
kids you have.
Right. Yeah. And it's a caregiving role. Like, I mean, I know each role has come with its own challenges, but I see so much training out there for caregivers of older people or their sick parents or something like that. And I'm thinking motherhood is a caregiving role that also takes a lot from you. Even if your kids are doing great and healthy, it's still a caregiving role.
It's still a caregiving role. It's still, getting them off to school every day, where they have to be for activities, and there's just a high demand placed
Mm,
on parents.
yeah. A high demand on your own mental health, going
Yeah.
back to that point. Yeah.
I mean, I sit here with like multiple calendars and things in multiple places to try to keep it all under wraps and organized. Like,
Mm.
that's a task. It's a daily task. And sometimes I don't want to do that task, but
Also just the mental load, right? The mental load on moms is enormous.
yeah.
And I
Like,
don't want to
parenting
sound
is a full-time job, and yet most of us, many of us, work a full-time job outside the home and then have to like squeeze in parenting in the off hours, and it's just the mental load is insane.
Mhm.
and even if you don't have a full-time job, the mental load is insane. We just add that extra layer. And I don't want to sound sexist, if that's even the word. This is not based on research, but I feel that the mental load is different between moms and dads. Like we have, like we were born with this extra chip in our minds that stress more than maybe dads. I don't, again, this is just maybe my own personal experience, but I feel like there's so much more happening in our
I think
minds
the
as moms.
anxiety kicks in the second a woman finds out they're expecting.
Yeah.
Like,
Totally.
there's a switch that goes off that you will never turn back off again
Oh,
the second you find out you're expecting, because it's like your body's changing. You had that
Yeah.
physical connection that dads don't get to experience. And that's not to put down dads. That's just, it
Yeah.
is. There's a physical connection that happens between mother and child in the womb from the get-go.
Yeah. Good point. I always thought it was from the moment we open our legs. Mine were C-section, but it's true. I didn't think it's true. It's since you get pregnant, of course.
I feel like the second somebody finds out they are pregnant,
Yeah.
like that switch turns on and it will never ever turn off. And it doesn't matter how old your kids are, because, even as a grown woman, my mother still worries about me, and that
My little brother will be 40 this December, and my mom regularly calls me to talk about how much she's worried about him and what he's doing with his life and all that. Like, yeah, it would be nice if it turned off when they turned 18.
No,
But
if anything, I think it goes up when they turn
I
18.
was just going to say
The
that.
age where they're all leaving for college,
yeah,
and you're hoping that you did enough for them to like launch into the world. And every parent's goal is to raise a happy young adult who can be successful in the world. And success looks different for every kid and every individual, and that's fine. There is no one definition of success. But I think it actually gets amped up, Tara, at 18, unfortunately,
I'm
because
seeing that.
all of the families that I treat that have recently kind of like sent kids off to college this fall, those parents get left there going, oh gosh, is the ball going to drop? Am I going to get a phone call? Am I going to have to go pick my kid up from college? It's even worse because they're not under your thumb anymore. You're launching them out into the world.
Something to look forward to.
I'm sorry, something to look forward to.
Well, I feel like we've had a lot of takeaways from this episode, from things to kind of look out for if you think your kid is struggling, how to take those next steps if you determine that that's the right thing for you, and then, the optimism of how great it is in the future.
On that note, I have one last question, actually, Dr. Wellner, that I didn't have planned to ask you, but it came to my mind, and I don't know if it's going to be actually even helpful for audience or not. But here it is. Like, if I know there's a wide list of options, but what are the most common diagnoses that you're seeing in kids, maybe depending on their age? And again, not that this is what your kids out there are going to have, but I know it has changed through the years. Like, is it really still ADHD, or there are a lot of kids being diagnosed with ADHD? And maybe the helpful part of this conversation is that if your kid ends up diagnosed with this, maybe your answer is going to give them a little bit of comfort, saying, it's not just my kid, this happens and it's happening. And, like asthma or allergies or.
So there's definitely still a high prevalence of ADHD, but what I have seen is there's a lot of anxiety.
Right.
And there's anxiety in younger and younger kids. And unfortunately, in adolescence, you start to see more depression hit. It is not the most common thing to see depressed younger kids, but in the tween years and moving into the teenage years, you definitely start to see increases in depression. And unfortunately, depression and anxiety are tied and linked. They go hand in hand a lot of times. And you can also go hand in hand ADHD and having anxiety or depression. So they're not mutually exclusive. And I think what I'm seeing more and more of is people have more than one thing.
Right.
Not just one thing. It can be just one thing. Like you can have just ADHD and have attention issues, but a lot of times I've seen a lot of kids and adolescents that have ADHD plus anxiety. And those two unfortunately feed off each other negatively and can make those two disorders can make each other worse, unfortunately.
And for the other thing is, many parents out there having the fear of medication for their children. So is does having a diagnosis automatically means that your child needs to be on medication? Can some of these conditions are being treated without medication? Because just, in case there's any
Definitely.
others.
Yeah,
Mhm.
medications are not necessarily first line treatment for every mental health disorder that's out there. On the
Mhm.
ADHD front, often medications are recommended as a first line, but that doesn't necessarily mean you have to jump, like you get that diagnosis, you have to jump to it immediately. It depends. Is it impacting the kid? Like, I have a child with ADHD, and because of my line of work, I started saying it probably around the age of 3 or 4 that he had ADHD, but we didn't start meds at that point. We
Right.
waited and we worked with the school and we said, when is this impacting him? And when it started impacting him, that's when I said, okay, it's time.
Mhm.
But most things like anxiety and depression, first line treatment is to go talk to somebody.
Mhm.
Medications are not the be all end all fix all, and that is coming from the person who writes the script. They don't fix everything. If your kid is highly anxious, a medication might help take the edge off of the anxiety and the intensity of it. But that child needs to learn coping skills. They need to learn how to deal with when they're feeling anxious, or to prevent them from ending up in a full-blown panic. And those are
Right.
things that are taught in therapy. A medication doesn't do that for an individual.
Right. So, seeing medication as another resource, and it might be or might not be appropriate for your kid's specific situation, but it goes back to finding a right professional and ask those questions.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being with us today. I have a few takeaways that I want to share with our audience. Number one, moms, we don't have to do it alone. It is okay to bring other team members to your team, right? Whether it's professionals or the mom that is going through something similar. If you go to a provider and you do not feel comfortable with that provider, or you don't like the line of treatment, or it is okay also to find a second opinion, because I found sometimes people find providers and then they get stuck because they didn't feel heard or didn't feel it was the right match, and that is okay. You can keep, meet with a different provider and start there. Let's keep focusing, and we do it on this podcast, on strategies to protect our own mental health while supporting our kids in this case. Super important to turn the volume up on that when you are a mom, and specifically a mom of a kid who's dealing with their own struggles. And let's pay attention to that guilt, that anxiety, or that stress that can come with motherhood itself. Doesn't have to, right? Like we said, it's not our fault if our kids need that extra support. It's just, it makes them human. Thank you so much. How can people get in touch with you? Is there a website for your practice?
So, yes, thank you guys so much for having me. So my website is www.annapolispsychiatry.com. And if people are looking for other parenting advice, I also co-host a podcast called Parenting Shrink Wrapped that's on all the major podcast hosting. And we are also on YouTube. So if you search for Parenting Shrink Wrap, you can also find us there for other advice
We're
about parenting.
huge fans of your podcast, and also best podcast name ever. So definitely encourage people to go check you guys out. And thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you for listening. If you want to connect with me outside of this podcast, you can find me on Instagram at coaching_therapist.
I'm Elizabeth. You can find me at Elizabeth Harris Nutrition, or in my Facebook group, Health and Healing with Intuitive Eating.
And I'm on Instagram and Facebook at Tara DeLeon Fitness. Guys, if you loved this episode or any of our other episodes, we would love it if you would leave us a review on Apple Podcast. It really, really helps us get the non-diet word out to the rest of the world. So please leave us a review.
Yes, thank you.